Welcome to the Everyday Ministry Podcast, a podcast where everyday ministers get together to discuss ministry. My name's Korey Coward.
And I'm James White. As we get started today, as we are discussing the topic of the importance of support in ministry, Korey, let's just catch up for a minute. How's everything been since we recorded the last episode?
Well, we're getting ready to go into the summer, and that's always a really busy time, just getting ready to go to, summer camp. And also, graduation is right around the corner. Most of my students graduate May the 26th, and so we're getting senior stuff ready and trying to get them set up and everything. And also, I'm getting ready for a Phoenix mission trip in halfway through June, and then as well, we have Vacation Bible School coming up at our church around that same time. So, in case you didn't notice, it's quite busy, if I might say.
I understand that.
But it's all good.
Oh, yeah.
It's great.
For sure. I just this past week, I finished up everything for school. Wrote about 50 pages worth of papers in 10 days, so got that under my belt and took the last exam, so I'm free for a few weeks, and we'll pick up one class during the summer, starting May the 29th. So excited for a little break from school and just an opportunity to relax and chill out a little bit and actually read some books that I've had on my shelf for a little bit, and then try to finish working on my house. Ministry's been pretty good. The month of May is kind of slow for us at the church. Here in Lamar County, if you're not used to this or familiar with it, they actually do things called not visitation. They're called decorations. And what they are is these group of people get together and they decorate their graves.
At Decoration Day.
The funeral homes. Not funeral homes, graveyards. We didn't have that in Pickens County.
I
never heard of it.
I never heard of that till I moved to Florence. So.
But it's big here, so half of our church is gone pretty much the entire month of May, and then the last week of May, you got Memorial Day. So it's an interesting month for us. We just try to get on by and get past it, and the rest of the time it goes pretty well. So ministry's been good, and we've got a few podcasts in, and actually getting ready to just get some new interviews and different people lined up so we can move forward with all this. So excited about everything that's going on, excited about your ministry, Korey, and looking forward to hearing about your mission trip afterwards when you get back from that. But anyways, we get ready to go into the podcast and the discussion today. As I mentioned earlier, we're going to talk about the importance of support in ministry. And we're going to talk about a lot of different areas of how this support can present itself. And the first one that really comes to mind is the support of the family in ministry. And what I mean by that is the support of the minister's family. And obviously for anybody that's young and starting in ministry, that might be, it might be that they need the support of their parents and things of that nature. But specifically what comes to my mind when I think about the support of their family is their spouse, having the support from their wife. Because ministry, as we've talked about so far, and if you're in ministry and you're listening to this podcast, you know greater than anybody else that ministry can be a very busy and time-consuming thing. And so it's so easy to, maybe it's not a good thing to do this, but it's so easy to put your family to the side at times because you got to take care of the people in the church and all that. But obviously we're called to first serve our families, but we do have to sacrifice things that other people don't have to sacrifice for the sake of the church. So it's important to have your wife support you in ministry, or maybe if you're listening to this and maybe you're not an actual bivocation minister, maybe you just teach a Sunday school class, or you help with a different age group in the church, and you volunteer. Maybe you need the support of your spouse as well, and just to encourage you and build you up in it. But a big thing that I find is just knowing that my wife is praying for me. And I think that's a relation that all of us can think about, is knowing that your loved ones is praying for you in ministry. And so I think when I think about Korey, actually, and he don't even know I'm about to say this, but I know there's a woman in Korey's life, his grandmother, that prays for him pretty regular for his ministry. And we all have those. We all have people that are praying for us and encouraging us. So the first thing that's so important is the support of our family, um, and also in that we also take into consideration their needs as well. But so that's the first thing that come to my mind when we talk about support in ministry is the family aspect, having the support of them, and the second one is the support of the church itself, where you're serving. What do you think about that area, Corey?
It's huge because I've served in a church where the support wasn't that great. It was being a youth pastor. A lot of youth ministers, they get treated as a babysitter, and they get treated as take care of my kids for an hour, make sure they don't hurt themselves, and make sure they learn, who Moses is or who Noah is or about David and Goliath, and then I'll pick them up in an hour. And that's not what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be, more than that, and they're supposed to have that trust in you, that they trust that you're, teaching the Word of God and that you're being who you need to be for their kids and everything. But being in a church where there is no support, it can get very tough and it can get very frustrating, and you can feel very defeated, and you can start to just be bitter because you feel like everything you're doing is for kind of, I don't want to say for nothing, but it's just there's no appreciation. And although we don't do it to be appreciated, it is nice to have that appreciation. And then the flip side of that is working in a church that does support you, and they do everything for you, and they make sure you're taken care of. It very encouraging, and it excites you. It makes you feel like what you're doing, it's noticed, and it's very well received, and it encourages you and it fires you up, because if you're not supported and you feel like everybody there is not on your side, then when you go, you kind of already have defeated yourself when you get ready to preach or whatever it is. So I think it's very huge to have that support.
One big thing when I think about the support of the church, it's the fact that if you don't have the support of the church, you really can't do anything.
Right.
To take it to a different level, looking at the role of a pastor, if the church isn't supporting them and behind them and what they're leading the church to do, then obviously you can't really accomplish anything, because you're just a one-man show at that point. And then also in this topic of support of the church, I guess what comes to my mind is the fact that having the support of the church sometimes is something you have to earn. It's not something that, obviously they're going to support you just because of your role in God's calling on the church. But at some level, you have to give them a reason to back you up and to be there for you and to support you and to do those things. Because let's just be honest, if you don't take your job serious and you don't take your role that God's called you in serious, then you're not going to get support just because you have that title. So my encouragement in that is when we look at the support of the church, take it serious. Take what God's called you to do serious, because if He's called you to do it, He's called you to do it for a purpose, and it's bigger than who you are. It's bigger than what we do in ministry. And so, yes, the support of the church is so important. That's what we need. But also, don't just think that it's supposed to be given to you. Earn that support. Encourage the people. Support them. All right. Anything you want to add towards that?
I think I said a little bit about this a second ago, but I just want to emphasize it again. It's really important. And it's very encouraging when you know that the people of the church trust you, and they have faith in you that what direction they're going, like what direction the pastor's going or what direction the youth pastor's going. We trust that, and we're confident in that, and we feel good about that because we feel like they're doing the work of God, and we can see God working in their lives. And maybe they might be taking it to a place we've never been before, but we still have faith and we still trust them with that. And that's huge, because there's some times where, as in ministry, you want to go places where maybe not a lot of people are going, or you want to visit areas or talk about things that maybe not a lot of people are going. And when you have that support and that trust from the congregation, and you can feel that, it kind of helps to balance your doubts and your kind of fears about it out. So I think that's huge, and I think that's something that another humongous way that support plays in ministry.
I agree. And the next area, as we're looking at supporting ministry, first it's your family, second is the support of the church itself, and third it's really the support of the other staff members at your church. My current role, I'm the only pastor and paid leader, or even my church is a newer church, so we don't have deacons or anything of that nature. So we're really a one leadership kind of church. We have people in the church that they have roles in the church and they work in the church, but it's a little different setup right now, and we're moving towards differences in implementing leadership in the church over time. But really looking at the idea of staff members, it's maybe not something I personally go through now, but I've been under other pastors in the past when I was youth pastor, and I will say that as Corey's talked about some of his experiences, one of my experiences in youth ministry it was just like his, that support wasn't there. And a lot of times it was the fact that I didn't have support from the pastor more than anything. And so that made it hard at times. And now I wish I had somebody that I could support in ministry, and God will provide that person at some point. But Korey, he's a part of a church that has a children's pastor, a music pastor, and a pastor itself. And then he's the youth pastor, so he's going to talk a little bit about it more.
With staff members, other staff members, if that's kind of the setup you're in, like I am. Kind of along with the support of the church that we talked about a while ago, it really can boost you when all the staff, again borrowing from what I said earlier, when they all believe in what you are wanting to accomplish, and they want to do that along with you, and when you can kind of believe in them as well, because you got to think about it. For example, me having youth. I have to support my children's minister because the things that he and his wife do, that's going to carry into the things that they teach and the things that they, kind of build that foundation on when those kids get old enough to be in the youth. That's going to be where I get to start from and where I get to kind of pick it up where he left off. And then when they graduate out of the youth group, the pastor, he'll kind of pick up where I left off from that. And so when we all balance it out, we're all working toward the same mission, and we have to be on the same page, and we have to support one another. So if you have other staff members, I would encourage you to, if you work with other staff members in church, I would encourage you to really just give them words of encouragement, and if they're doing a good job, let them know. If you like the things they're doing, let them know. Maybe ask them sometime, are they doing okay? Do they need to talk to anybody? Anything you can pray for? Is there anything you can help with? I know we have a really awesome children's pastor, and I can call on him. I actually called him a while ago to help me with Sunday school for something, but when you can call on each other like that, that's really golden. And our music minister as well. I mean, he'll do anything for you if you call upon him. So that's very important. And just knowing that staff support may not be something we think about a lot, but it is something that I think we should kind of emphasize more than we do now.
One thing that comes to my mind in all of these areas, but especially in the area of the support of your staff members, and later we're going to talk about support of other ministers maybe in your area, or some that you just built relationships with. But a big area I think in supporting and then having that support is that you can encourage one another, because ministry, as we've talked about in the couple of the previous podcasts, talking about burnout and the difficulties of everyday ministry, is that it is hard. It gets tiring. It gets overwhelming at times. But if you have this support, especially of people inside of your church, then they can encourage you and build you up when it's hard, and you can call upon them. And I think one area that people lack in that area sometimes is that they don't ask for that help. They don't talk to somebody when they're down. Ministry is already lonely enough. We don't have to make it even more lonely. The the next thing we want to look at is support from a mentor. This area for me has been a huge in my ministry because as I've explained a little bit about my past ministry experience, the first 2 years I was in ministry, I was a youth pastor, and then about 3 years ago, I've come to the church that I'm serving at now. So I'm serving as a pastor for the first time, and I've only been doing it 3 years. And it's a small church. It's a weird situation. It's a church plant in a small town, Alabama. So there's difficulties that come with that. And this idea of support from a mentor, that has been something that's influenced me more than a lot of areas of my life. I would say, along with seminary, this right here has been one of the biggest help for me because with some of the people that I've had in my life, I'm able to talk to them about different aspects of church and pastoral leadership and how to lead change and how to lead things. And some men that come to my mind, and I'm going to hopefully have some of these guys, if not all of them, on the podcast, and we'll interview them at times because each of them have different years of experience. Is first off, it's Joey Lucas. He was the pastor at the church, the second church I served as youth pastor. We have a friendship, a relationship where we talk about anything and everything, and he supports me in that. But also a guy named Keith Martin. He serves at Kennedy Baptist Church. He's the pastor there, and I'm actually doing mentoring classes through New Orleans Baptist Seminary. If you go to that seminary and you do online or do extensions, I would encourage you to do that program. It's an amazing program. And you get to talk to somebody every week, and they pour into your life, and you can really just talk about ministry and life and family, and they help you in that. And then the third one is Scott Stokes. Scott Stokes is the director of missions here in Lamar County. Scott, he's in his mid 70s, and he's the part-time director of missions here. But Brother Scott, he's been a youth pastor, a music pastor, a pastor, and now he's a pastor for pastors. So I can talk to him about any area of life, and I promise you he's been through it. And as I'll probably say this when I do get to interview him one day, Brother Scott has actually had 2 of my lifetime in ministries, right? So he's been in ministry for 50 years almost, where I've only been born for that long, for half of that. So it's pretty amazing just to be able to talk to these men. Korey, is there any mentors in your life, or just people that kind of you can call on and talk to for when you need help?
My youth pastor growing up, Joe Cotton. I mean, me and him text pretty regularly, and I just ask him what if there's situations I know I can remember him going through that are kind of similar to what I go through. I'll text him and just kind of ask for wisdom or ask for what maybe I should do.
We got to get him on here at some point.
Yeah, we do. He would be good for it. David Sumner, the BCM director at North Alabama. We talk about ministry a lot, and he's been a youth pastor before, so that he understands. And also Jake Barrett. He was the second pastor I worked under as a youth pastor, and the thing I really liked about him was he was really invested in me growing as a youth pastor. He wanted me to do what I needed to do for the church that we were at, but he was more interested in me growing as a youth pastor beyond just that church. So it's not like he just wanted to make sure I did what I was supposed to so the church kept going and so he didn't get in trouble and all of that. He wanted me, even if I would have left, or even when I left, he wanted me to keep going. And he stays in touch with me, and we talk. And he's at a different church now, but he really did a lot. And there's other guys I talk to every now and then, but those are probably some of the main ones that I ask questions or get advice or wisdom from, which is very important. You need to have multiple people. You don't need to just have, I don't think, there might be one person you talk to more than others, but I think you need to have, 3 or 4 different viewpoints going. And the Bible talks about that, having many counselors when you make wise decisions. Proverbs talks about that, and it is very important. So I would encourage not just one, but maybe a good little group of mentors if you get into that.
For sure, and as you said, man, just some that's been in different walks of life. And if you look at the mentors I have, man, I have one that that he's bivocational. He hasn't been in school, but he's been in the trenches of ministry. One, he's been in school and he's in his late 50s, and the other one in his mid 70s. So the 3 that really come to my mind are just 3 in 3 different areas. Man, as Korey said, just find somebody. Don't do ministry alone. Don't try to do it alone. Talk to somebody, get advice. And I'm not saying don't pray, don't talk to God, don't let Him lead you, but God can speak through them men in your life to encourage you and help you through things. The last thing we want to talk about when we're talking about support in ministry, it's just the support from other ministers. That could be ministers in your community, or it could be just friends that you've made over the years that are in ministry as well. And really, what I think is kind of interesting about this topic and how we're talking about it right now is that's actually how this podcast got started. Because like me and Korey and Daniel, there's a couple other guys, we're just real close. We all do ministry together. When me, Korey, and Daniel, we all did youth ministry in Gordo with another guy named Tony, all at the same time, and we all got close and did ministry together and did events together. And just over the years, that's how this podcast has come about, is that we have these conversations. We talk about ministry together, and we have this support with one another. And then we decided to just throw up some mics and talk about it and put it out there for everybody to hear. But Korey, what are some benefits of this, you think?
It's really important to have people that you can talk to that know what you're going through and what your stresses are, and they understand, because I've talked to people before and expressed kind of some frustrations or problems or doubts or whatever to people who are not in ministry, and not saying they didn't have good advice, and not saying that somebody can't give good advice that's not in ministry, but when they're not looking at it from the same view that you are, it's not the same. In Florence, probably if I had to name the top 5 guys I hang with, 3 of those guys are youth pastors. And that's really, awesome to be able to, they get it. They get when I'm frustrated by something that may not seem like a frustrating issue to somebody else, but it's because you're in ministry and it's because these are the people you're working with that they understand. And it's important to not keep it all in. Now, I'm not saying, the Bible warns about venting away your problems and your trials and whatnot, and I don't think it's good to get on like a social media site and just let it all loose for the whole world to see. But I do think you need to get with some people and let them know, like, man, I'm not doing good. And part of that is being honest. If you're not doing good, tell somebody you're not doing good, because you're not always going to be doing good. If you're always doing good, you're probably not doing it right. Let people know when things are going good. Let people know when you have questions. But it's very crucial to have that, because if you don't have that, you're gonna go you'll go crazy in a sense. Maybe not literally, but in a sense.
And to add to that is some of the stuff that you go through in ministry. The people that you serve at that church don't need to know about it.
Yeah, some of it you need to keep private.
Yeah, I mean, you got to have some level of transparency, but some stuff they don't need to know about. And then, speaking for those that are married, some of the things that you go through, I'm not saying hide stuff from your wife, but there's some stuff that she doesn't need to know about.
Right.
Because you gotta protect her over the ministry at times. So you don't want to discourage her and uh, tell her all the negative things either. So it is beneficial to have that person that can relate to you and just speak life into you and give maybe not advice, but sometimes just somebody to talk to is good.
Mhm.
Um,
Something a good example of you saying some stuff doesn't need to be shared. Like the other night, actually, a guy put on Facebook, and that's not anywhere to air any type of problems, by the way, of any kind. Just want to throw that out there.
no, never do that.
You know, Andy Mineo, Christian rapper, he said, "Why don't you face your problems? Don't Facebook them." Very good advice to live by. Anyway, this guy put on, "Hey, our church needs prayer because we're going through a lot of mess right now. So please lift up all your prayers that you can." And there's nothing wrong with asking for prayer. That's okay. But when you say our church is going through a mess, because what happened was people started commenting and saying, "What's going on over there? What's wrong?" and all this, and you get things stirred up, and that's just not a good place for that. Not at all. And so be very careful with that. Just as James mentioned, that's really good to stay away from. Some stuff it needs to be discussed, but not with the entire public and not with the entire church. That's for sure.
And to add on this, maybe you're listening to this podcast and maybe you stumbled upon it and we don't even know who you are, or maybe we do and you don't have this support. You don't have these ministers in your life. You don't have the mentors in your life. And I don't want to say that we know everything and we can advise you in everything that you go through, because by far we cannot. But if you do need that support, you need somebody to vent to talk to pray for you. Shoot us an email, look us up on Facebook and Instagram, get in touch with us. We would love to pray for you and talk to you if you ever need anything. We may not have the answers, but man, we can pray and we can talk to a God that does on your behalf just like you can. But find somebody. If it's not us, I mean, we'll be happy to be there. But find somebody, talk to somebody that can support you. And as I look over these lists one more time, pray for your spouse, pray for your family as they support you in ministry. I really hope and pray that you had this support before you went in ministry, but also, earn that support from your church. Don't just expect it. Earn it. Put the time, put the attention that needs into it. Pray for your members of your church. Pray for your youth members. Pray for their lives. Pray for them by name. Some of you may be at large churches, and that may be hard to do, but man, pray for them. Earn that support from them. Don't just expect it. And then also, like Korey said when we talked about the support of the staff members, man, encourage them, build them up. Tell them if they do a good job. Hold your tongue if they don't do a good job. I mean, because we all have those moments. And then also find a mentor. Maybe you've been in ministry for years and you've been through the trenches and you know what's going on in it. Mentor somebody. If you're able to do that, pour into somebody else. And then also just get some friends around you that are in ministry that can relate to you and be there for you. But at the end of the podcast, like every other time, I do want to say, we at this podcast, we don't pretend to have all the answers or to know exactly everything, but we just want to advocate a conversation about ministry. And then also, it's time for the plug of the week. Korey, do you got any plugs that you want to put out there?
There's a lot of. I don't really have one specific one, unfortunately. But I would advise you to find books about ministry, and look at some of those and how they talk about support. And when you get discouraged in things, there's many of those out there, but understand, I'd get books about ministry from other ministers because they know, and especially some of these, such as a Doug Fields or a Rick Warren or somebody like that. They've been doing it for a long time, and so I would advise you to do that, just so you know you're not alone. Like even these, in quotes here, because you can't see me, but even though these big names, as we like to say sometimes, even they go through doubts and struggles. So maybe pick up some books that they've written about ministry, so that you can see how to get through tough times or when you don't go through support.
As I mentioned earlier, I'm actually in a mentoring class through New Orleans this semester. And I had to read 2 books for that class. I actually had to read 4 books for it. But 2 books that really stood out one was Preparing for Ministry, a practical guide to theological field education. And the second one is Overcoming the Dark Side of Leadership. The first book is Preparing for Ministry. That book right there, man, it really just talks about how to have a mentor, how to mentor someone. That right there, as we talked about in the podcast, that's a huge area. But it just helps you prepare for ministry and have that person to speak into you and to encourage you. And then this book, Overcoming the Dark Side of Leadership. Me and Daniel has actually talked about this book multiple times because we both had to read it this semester. This book right here, it man, it will make you look at your life in a way that you've never looked at it. It'll make you question why you do the things you do, what's caused you to be the person that you are, and to really do exactly what the title says, is to overcome the dark side. The big point it makes in this is that everybody has a dark side of leadership. Everybody that has something that pushes them at times that really that shouldn't be what pushes them. What should push them is to do what God's called them to do and see His kingdom grow and to share the gospel and make disciples. But these 2 books, when we talk about support of people in the church and mentoring, these 2 books are some of the greatest books you could pick up. So I want to recommend them. And Korey, before we sign off here, you got anything you want to add?
Just make sure that if you're not getting support at all in ministry, because that's possible, understand that God's got your back. And I know that sounds really cliche and really simple, but He does. And I think a lot of times we treat that as simple. We treat that as like that's not a big deal, and it is. It's huge. If God be for us, who can be against us? So just remember that if nobody else has got your back in ministry and you're doing the will of God and you're doing what you know He wants you to do, know that He's on your side. And it may be a while before you see some support, but just have encouragement that He has got you, and He's got you covered, and He's got you in His hands safely. And no matter how much backlash you get from something or lack of support you get, He is behind you 100%.
To just play off what you said there, man, really what comes to my mind is probably one of the most common verses that you hear people talk about. Do you want to guess what it might be, Korey? Just guess one.
Man, I don't know. Jeremiah 29:11.
Yep.
Jeremiah. Oh,
yep.
yes, I'm good.
Jeremiah 29:11.
Kind of scares me, but
says, "For I know the plans that I have for you, declares the Lord, plans of welfare and not of evil, to give you a future and hope." And we talk about this verse so much, and we put it on plaques, and we hang it up in our house for encouragement, and that's what it should be. But in reality, when you look at what's going on in the Scripture, is God is saying this to His people, but His people were about to go into exile for hundreds of years, and they were about to go through some of the most difficult times of their life. But God is saying that He had a plan in all of it, and He was going to take care of them. And so I say that to say, as Korey said, man, if you're going through something that's hard, difficult, God's got your back. He's got a plan for you. He's working it out for you, His good and for the good of those who love Him. But enjoyed the conversation today, Korey, and I hope you as the listeners enjoyed it as well. I want to encourage you to check us out on the everydayministrypodcast.com. As I've said in the past, that's you can find more about us as individuals, how to get in touch with us. But also, at some point in the life of the podcast, we're going to start doing blogs, not only us three, but those that we interview on the podcast. And then also check us out on Facebook.com/everydayministry podcast. It's on that. You can like the page, and you can just talk to us on there if you want to. Get in touch with us through that. But also subscribe to the podcast in whatever catch you use. If it's Instagram, or if not Instagram, I don't know why I said Instagram. If it's iTunes, or if it's Google Play, just subscribe to it, listen to us, and even go on in iTunes and review and rate us. That would be beneficial to us all. But enjoyed it today, and I hope you enjoyed it as listeners. And thank you for joining us this week for the Everyday Ministry Podcast, a podcast where everyday ministers get together to discuss ministry.